working families tax credit, our public telecom bill. We had a bill on foreclosure fairness, just a whole bunch of topics. And then on racial equity, most folks are, really think about the police accountability work that we did, which was really great between the House and the Senate, but we also passed bills related to voting rights, to the elimination of private detention facilities in the state, to Juneteenth, to expanding women and minority-owned contracting opportunities, college and high school, lots of great things there. And then finally, in the climate change area, obviously low carbon fuel standards really important to us in the House, but also a number of bills addressing the Growth Management Act, since this is a big year for that. And that, the work that we do there will also help us on climate change. So we're really pleased with everything that we were able to do before cutoff.
And I'll just echo what Speaker Jenkins said. We have so much to be proud of the work that we have done. And even in the Senate, we really made sure we did a lot of work around equity, around making sure we're taking care of people during COVID, making sure we are taking a look at healthcare, criminal justice reform, police accountability, taking a look at our workers who've been so impacted, taking a look at environmental justice. And, the list goes on. And I have to say, it was challenging to think about how we're going to navigate this remote session. And I have to say, I give so much credit to our tech people, because they really made sure we were able to get this work done, get it done in a manner in which we heard from constituents all across the state. We had record participation from individuals wanting to have their voices heard. To me, that was really amazing to see how many people signed in for our hearings and how they participated. And even floor action, I thought it went much better than I anticipated it would in a remote session. We were able to get the work done, get it done in a way that was organized. And I'm looking forward to making sure we dig deep into the House bills and looking forward to seeing our Senate bills pass in the House.
All right, thank you. First, we'll go to Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel, go ahead.
The revenue forecast on Wednesday is expected to have some continued good news on that revenue front. Can you talk about how the budget process is being approached with that in mind, in addition to the federal stimulus that's coming our way? Also, has a release date been set for the first legislative budget plan?
I'm going to kick it over to Pat Sullivan, because he's one of the four of us who's working probably most closely on budget issues.
Yeah, and so, thanks, Rachel. And the fact that the federal money that's come in, as well as the revenue forecast on Wednesday, does have a huge impact on our budget and how we move forward. And so it will delay our budget release probably by about a week, because we want to, especially with the federal package, try to incorporate as much as we can into the budget. So it will take a little bit longer. But, we're going to have funds available to continue to provide rental assistance to, communities who really need it, business assistance, additional testing money, as well as vaccination money. So it's critical that we get it right, and that money goes out as quickly as we can to communities that are in real need.
And I would just add that all those resources still paper over the worst tax system in the country, which is why the Senate sent the House a capital gains proposal, so that even in the midst of this new revenue, we do still need to take a look at the fundamental unfairness that exists in our system right now, and certainly appreciate Speaker Jenkins' long leadership in this regard. But even with revenue forecasts and with federal assistance, there's still some fundamental inequity in our economy that we can and should address this year.
And I'll just add, we have to be really mindful that the federal assistance that we're getting is a one-time dollar amount. So it's not something that we can put new programs and think there's going to be funding that is going to continue. And, I'm very, very mindful of what we're doing in the behavioral health field, especially given COVID and the real increase in substance use disorder with individuals dying with our children struggling with behavioral health issues and anxiety. And so really making sure we're being very, very clear on what is a one-time expenditure and what is going to be something that's going to be ongoing. And so those really have to be figured out, because the federal government is only going to help us out this one time.
Rachel, do you have a follow-up?
No, I'm all set. Thanks.
Great. Next, we'll go to Drew Mickelson at King 5. Drew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to see if there's an update on the Blake matter with the drug possession. And then as we're about to head into phase 3 here statewide, I can go to a bowling alley, I can go to a movie theater, but I can't go watch my state legislature at work. I personally can, because I am media and I can get an escort in there, but the general public can't get in that building anymore. Is it time to open up the state legislature?
Those are such two different topics. I'll just tell you, people can watch us on TVW or all the time. They can participate through Zoom. And I'll just say, we in the Senate do have a hybrid floor action. And so we are really making sure, again, to continue to do what Washington has done so well, which is having a public health approach to the virus. I loved reading that New York Times article that talked about if everyone had done what we had done, how many people we would have saved nationally. And so I think it's imperative, as we're opening up, we still continue to listen to the experts. We continue to wear our masks. We continue to have social distancing. And as those recommendations change, since we are hybrid on the Senate floor, we'll see what those numbers look like. But we have variants out there. And this is the time where we really make sure we do not have a third surge. I recently heard of another country that was looking at a third surge because people weren't careful about reopening and what that means. So I love that our vaccine rollout is going as well as it is. And we have to continue to make sure people are getting vaccinated. And I think we still have to just be making sure we are following the guidelines. I'll let others comment on this, and then I'm happy to answer Blake, but there were two such different topics. So if any of the other legislators want to comment on stage 3, please do.
Drew, the House rules that we adopted said that anytime we move from one phase to another, our chief clerk will kind of look at what that phasing recognizes and suggests happen, and then we'll bring recommendations back to us about what to do. So I know that our chief clerk is actually looking at that now to make some recommendations to us in the House. We're a little bit different than the Senate. We've been in a fully remote session. It's worked very, very well, and not a single staff person nor member has gotten ill, not a single one with COVID because of how safe we've been. So I'm pleased with how we've done so far, but recognize that because we're moving into phase 3, there may be some opportunities there, and we'll certainly take a look at them. And I'll kick it back to Senator Dingra because she's one of the leaders between the House and the Senate on figuring out our Blake response. We more than a week ago now asked a group of House members and a group of senators to really lead the legislature in terms of planning and how we address that decision. And Senator Dingra is one of the leaders of that group.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Blake. So yes, we've had multiple stakeholder meetings with people in the community, with prosecutors. I've spoken to law enforcement. I've spoken to individuals who are dealing with our therapeutic courts to really make sure we're hearing from everyone on Blake and the impacts. And as Speaker Jenkins mentioned, we have a group in the House and we have a group in the Senate. And so taking a look at Blake, I'm going to break it down into 3 different categories, right? One is those individuals who currently have a drug possession charge. So if they have a charge and they haven't been convicted of it, it's my understanding all of those cases either have been dismissed or in the process of being dismissed. What was really interesting is we don't see a lot of those cases because for over 27 years, our state actually has been moving to a public health approach to small amounts of possession cases, right? That happened the first time we started our drug court 27 years ago. That understanding that prison and a conviction wasn't how to handle this. And so for 27 years, we have expanded our drug courts. We have created mental health courts, veteran courts, community courts, all were dealing with substance use disorder crisis. We then created the LEAD program, law enforcement diversion programs. And again, those are something that the legislature for the last 2-3 years has really funded and expanded so that the LEAD program is not only available in King County, but available in all the different parts of the state. And when you take a look at involuntary commitment laws as well, we did Ricky's Law, which was involuntary commitment for substance use disorder. We have invested in crisis stabilization units. We have expanded peer-run housing, clubhouses. Senator Leas has a wonderful naloxone bill that passed the Senate about making naloxone available to more individuals. You know, crisis mobile units, CARES team. You look at a lot of the work in the behavioral health field for the last 2 decades, and it has been about a behavioral health approach to substance use disorder. So that was the interesting part, is when you took a look at how many of these individuals who are currently pending cases were in custody, there actually weren't too many, because they have been utilizing all of these diversion programs that we have been supporting and funding through the legislature for over 2 decades now. Then we take a look at who are those individuals who are currently in prison or on supervision with those convictions, and really making sure we have a plan on either resentencing or dismissing those cases, because the Supreme Court found that our statute was unconstitutional. We then have to take a look at all of those individuals who have a conviction but aren't under the jurisdiction of an agency. So anyone from 1971 who has had a conviction for drug possession is entitled to have that conviction vacated, because the Supreme Court found this statute to be unconstitutional. So there's a lot of work going around on how to handle all of those issues. Then becomes the issues of legal financial obligations. Anyone who has paid legal financial obligations under this, we're really looking at what the law says on making those refunds. And I think there is very clear consensus that legal financial obligations have to be returned to these individuals. So really taking a look at understanding that system, what that looks like, what the state obligation is on it. And just to complicate matters, the distribution of funds between city, counties, and state has fluctuated over all of these years. So those are the things that we have been taking a look at, really making sure that we have a plan on taking a look at that. And then the issue becomes, how do we move forward as a state? And with that, you know, I will say we are taking a look at what it means to have individuals who have drug possessions, and how are we as a state going to react to it. And so really making sure we come up with legislation that reflects the reality on the ground. And I can tell you, since I've been in the legislature for the last 3 years, every time we talk about behavioral health issues or substance use disorder issues, regardless of party affiliation, I have had members over and over again on the Senate floor, in committees, talk about treatment, talk about how their constituent, their neighbor wanted their loved one to go into treatment. Not once have I heard anyone on the Senate floor or in committee say, I told them to call 911 and get that kid arrested because what they're doing is illegal. It was always about, how do I get my loved one the treatment that they need? The other flip side also is, individuals do not want to see someone who is in the park using drugs. And so it really is, how do you make sure that moving forward as a state, we have legislation that reflects the reality that we have been moving towards a public health approach to substance use disorder for a very, very long time, and making sure we have those lines on what is personal use versus what is enough possession that you intend to distribute, because possession with intent to distribute is still illegal. I can stop there, but I can talk about this topic for hours at end.
Drew, you kind of got your follow-up with your first one. You're good? All right. Next, we'll go to Sarah Gensler with McClatchy. Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to continue on that same topic, actually. Senator Dingra, if you could talk a little bit about how, Lewis County and Marysville now have both tried to either started or actually have, tried to enforce now knowingly possessing drugs locally, or at least try to find a way to locally change that. So I'm wondering what the timeline for the state addressing this might look like. And if you have any thoughts on the local role versus the state's role in addressing the impacts.
Excellent question. I did see that the Marysville was interested in doing this in Lewis County as well. This is something where I firmly believe that the state needs to have a statewide policy. We cannot, as a state, have these pockets of different laws so that people don't know what the law is from one block to the next block. So I think absolutely we need something statewide. This decision came up after policy cutoff. So there is some creativity that's going to be involved in making sure we can get legislation introduced and through the state. But, again, as I mentioned, it's very important to make sure that the reality on the ground is what we are legislating. Because while we have had the drug possession cases, since 1971, if you take a look at how often they're used, the manner in which they're used, and the geographic area in which they're used, there's huge disparity. Even when you take a look at our drug diversion courts all across the state, it's really fascinating to see how many of them had drug possession cases and how many did not. And even the ones that had individuals that were charged with drug possession, really understanding, what was the original charge that they were referred to the prosecuting attorney's office with. And we're not seeing low-level drug possession cases. These cases are simply not coming into our criminal justice system. And so we have to make sure that any legislation we have reflects that reality. And so that is what we will be looking at. And frankly, I have to say, with COVID and what's going on with our court cases and our courtrooms and our judges, we're seeing backlogs just of the criminal cases, not even talking about civil, that it's going to take us 2 to 3 years to get caught up. So I think taking a look at all of those realities is what is going to make sure we have a bill that reflects that. And again, I'll say, your neighbor, your family member, what they're looking for is ramping up access to treatment. And that's what I really hope that we will continue to enforce and continue to supply. And one of the things this interim that I did, and I'm sorry, I love talking about this topic, so I'm going to tell you one more story. This interim, Representative Davis and I used to have monthly meetings on the implementation of Ricky's Law. This is the civil commitment based on substance use disorder, really making sure that we're understanding what the barriers are and making sure that the law is being implemented well. And as part of that, the legislator had funded 2 new SWIMS facilities. These are secure withdrawal management facilities. And so as part of that, we were trying to see, how they're working with the Civil Commitment Act. And we got statistics back saying that they have a success rate of 95%. And I will tell you, I was frankly blown away. I, in my head, was thinking, if it's 60%, 65%, I'll be satisfied. I had to confirm that number multiple times because I couldn't believe that their success rate on voluntary treatment was 95%. And it really speaks volumes to the fact that when you make treatment available, where you have treatment that people can access without creating barriers, people will respond to that. And so I think that's what we need to do as a state. Make sure we have more treatment options available throughout. The other thing I worked on this summer was with Senator Brown in Benton Franklin County, where the prosecutor and the cities have this proposal for a crisis diversion facility, an inpatient facility, and an outpatient facility. And the reason why the prosecutor's involved is because they don't want to be prosecuting drug possession cases. They want a public health approach to it.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, quickly. I'm not sure the right way to ask this, but I guess if you're trying to avoid a patchwork of localities addressing this on their own. Is there anything the state can do to stop that from happening while you're coming up with your own solution?
Well, we will have to do something before session ends. So absolutely. And that's why we're having all of these meetings and really making sure we understand the reality on the ground, and then we'll have a bill that reflects that reality. And that should prevent the different cities and counties doing different things.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we'll go to Joe O'Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Joe. Joe, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Two questions. First one for the House. We saw capital gains proposal get a public hearing today. Do you anticipate moving that through committee and getting it on the floor in the near future, or is that going to wait till the end of session? And then for anyone in leadership, curious if you've been in contact with the governor on the eviction moratorium, which I think is set to end the end of the month. Have you asked for it to be extended? Do you think the governor's going to ask? And if not, I don't know, what sort of fallout do you see from that?
Well, I mean, I think I'll take these in reverse order, Joe. Yeah, I'm aware that the governor has been asked to extend the eviction moratorium, and I think it's probably a pretty good idea to do that. You don't. I expect that the federal money that's coming, and then the budget is going to really address the eviction moratorium in terms of rent relief for renters and for our landlords, and to move into mass evictions at the end of the month just doesn't seem like a good strategy. But I have not personally talked to the governor about what his plans are yet, other than to know that those requests are in, and I think he's thinking about that. I think with regard to the capital gains excise tax bill, was happy to see that the House Finance Committee heard it this morning. I expect it'll be well received in the committee, but I think we take everything on a step-by-step approach. And once they move it out of committee, if they do, I'm expecting they likely will. I don't see any reason why we need to hold it till the very end, in large part due to what Senator Elias is talking about. This is really about trying to address our upside down tax structure and making sure that the recovery that we have isn't built on the backs of the poorest Washingtonians, which it would be exclusively if we didn't have a capital gains excise tax. So that's the real reason for moving that forward, I think, this year. So there's no reason why it needs to wait till the end. But again, we'll just have to see how the mix works as we see it move forward.
Joe, do you have a follow?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Next, we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Jerry.
I guess this is for leadership as well. I want to talk about the governor as early as today will issue the emergency proclamation to schools to provide in-person instruction no later than April 19th for all grades. I'm wondering, what is your reaction to that, if you think he might be overstepping, and what are you hearing from school leaders and teachers, many of whom have worked out arrangements prior to last Friday on how they were going to finish out the school year in terms of reopening? So your reaction and what you're hearing.
I think what you found is that we had a conversation in our caucus about this, and I think you're going to find a variety of viewpoints from our members. But I think the most critical piece is that now that the order has been issued, how can we support our schools so that as our students come back into the classroom, that they are safe, so that the teachers are safe, so that all the school employees are safe, and that learning goes on in those buildings. And so, it's incumbent upon us right now to do everything in our power to make sure that as students go back, they have the tools and the resources they need to be successful. And that's what we're going to focus on.
And I would just add that I think this is an extension of the governor's public health approach. Senator Dingra referenced the New York Times article. If the rest of the states in the country had followed our lead a year ago, we would see a lot more Americans who are alive right now. And I think Governor Inslee has demonstrated to the public and to our members a public health focused approach. I'm pleased that vaccines are widely available. My own partner is a K-12 employee and got his first vaccination in the last week. So that's, I think, an important step that our school employees are able to get vaccinated, and the governor is using the best public health information to make these decisions, and we'll continue in this direction.
Gary, have a follow?
Yeah, I guess I'll stay on that topic for a minute, because you have all these budgets and you've got a very large wad of federal dollars, some in hand and some coming. The governor has talked about it being a mental health crisis, yet the proclamation puts the onus on each of the school districts to essentially resolve it for themselves. I'm wondering if you think it would be better for the state to provide the resources and let the districts come to a state, like a Marshall Plan, if you will, so that there is I guess, a consistent approach on how the state approaches the youth mental health crisis that he's talked about.
So I'll just mention on the youth mental health crisis, our schools actually have a different way of delivering these services. I know the ones that in my school, in my district, the school districts that we have, many of them contract with local organizations that help provide that. There is a relationship they have with NAMI East Side, their relationships with a lot of the other organizations that provide services and support. And I think it's also important to make sure that they understand the needs of their children and the manner in which those needs have to be met. Children respond so differently to things. And I think you need that flexibility at the local level for the schools to really do what they think their children need. And I'll just say that's a school-based response to behavioral health, but we have been doing so much across the state when it comes to children's behavioral health, especially with the wonderful children's and youth behavioral health team that we have. We've had amazing leaders in the House that have really done so much in children's behavioral health. We have a huge bucket on their recommendations in our budget that we will be funding, really making sure we have youth crisis lines, making sure we have safe lines, really ensuring that our crisis connections are ready to serve the youth, doing more around the youth being able to talk to each other about the issues they're dealing with, and really making sure we have plans that talk about destigmatizing. And our schools have been doing more and more about it. Both my kids, I always talk to them about what they learned in health class and what their mental health component in the health classes. And I've just seen such tremendous change in that from when they first started learning about health and the behavioral health component of it. But the biggest thing we can do is make sure we destigmatize this issue so that our children feel comfortable talking about it and seeking help for it. And that's going to take everything, not just our school's responsibility in addressing it.
And in the early action bill, with all the relief that we provided on the wide variety of things, we did send $688 million to our school districts to deal with a variety of issues, including children's mental health, and particularly as it ties to the COVID virus. We're also looking at, as we're moving forward our budget process, what we do in both the supplemental as a step 2 and in the biennial budget. So there's additional help coming to our school districts, not just from that early action bill that's being allocated right now, but in the supplemental and biennial budget that we'll be adopting here in just a matter of a month or so.
And I just want to build on what Representative Sullivan said. We also have the community response. I know that House is working on the 988 bill that Senator Dingra has been integral in. We passed a tip line proposal over from the Senate to help provide community resources. And I want to salute my seatmate in the House for talking about secondary trauma. We know that our teachers are deeply impacted by the trauma their students are experiencing right now. So we need a state-local partnership. We also have a federal partner on this now with the Biden administration solution. So I don't think any level of government is uniquely responsible. I think we have to all work in concert to create a robust system of supports that supports the kids, their families, and the other adults that they're working with to make sure we all get out of this in good shape.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Melissa Santos with Crosscut. Melissa, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to ask about broadband. I mean, Speaker Jenkins mentioned the public broadband bill, but it struck me when talking to some PUD leaders and others that without some funding for the infrastructure, they might not be able to take advantage of that legislation to actually offer broadband. So I'm wondering if there's plans and sort of as a priority in the budgets to include money, I guess maybe capital budget or operating, to kind of actually get some public broadband programs off the ground and actually fund that infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Senator. Go ahead, Senator Elias.
I would just say that Chair Frocht, our capital budget lead, has indicated a real desire to make a capital budget investment here, and we know that there'll be more federal resources. So we don't have the details yet, but I think you can expect when our capital budget proposals come out that you'll see a substantial investment that goes alongside this. And happy to toss the rest over to you, Senator or Speaker Jenkins.
I don't have a lot to add. I would just say, first of all, you have to deal with first things first. The PUDs have to get authority to be able to do this first. So it's important to have the policy bill. But secondly, we've actually had money in the capital budget for quite a while for broadband access. It's been most typically in rural broadband. That hasn't always been expended, but I do know that the budget chairs are working together on that very topic right now to make sure, on the assumption that the bill will move, and this will be one way that we can actually help in our COVID response, help our kids make sure they're getting good education. Not every family is going to want to send their kids back into the school building. Some will want to remain home for a while and will want to make sure that there's access there. So it addresses this kind of broadband access, really addresses so many challenges that we have in the healthcare, education, and other settings. So we're highly committed to it.
Yeah, and it's not just about the broadband either. Mia Gregerson in the House has been working on making sure that students also have access to devices. Just having access to broadband doesn't do much for it if you don't have the devices to actually connect and make that work. And so she's been working on a proposal to ensure that students have access to those devices.
Melissa, you have a follow?
Yeah, regarding school reopenings, the Superintendent Reichdahl indicated on Friday that 35 or so districts did not submit, sufficient plans under the bill, the relief bill that you folks passed by March 1st to kind of get the money released to them, or at least that's how he's interpreting the bill. So he's withholding some of the money, at least for now, from 35 districts who didn't submit sufficient reopening plans, is what he said. Are you disappointed in that? Are you hearing from your districts in your district, I guess, that they're having trouble submitting reopening plans? Or what are your thoughts on some of those districts not meeting that March 1st deadline for submitting thorough reopening plans?
Well, I'm sure districts are dealing with an awful lot right now, but of course we're disappointed. We would have liked to have gotten a reopening plan from every district, and hopefully those 35 districts that haven't submitted them as of yet will submit them very soon.
Okay, next we'll go to Austin Jenkins with the Northwest News Network. Austin.
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the budget and how it will be affected, not just by the federal funds that are coming in and potentially the revenue forecast this week, but more specifically, how do those factors play into decisions about whether to tap the rainy day fund, and also whether to consider taxes other than the capital gains tax, like, for instance, the governor's proposal for the healthcare insurance premium and or the sugary tax strength to fund public health. In other words, are those still viewed as necessary and in play, or perhaps less necessary because of this additional money coming in? And the same thing with tapping into the rainy day fund, less necessary or still definitely on the table?
Well, as Senator Elias pointed out earlier, that the federal money is one time, and so you have to be very cautious in how you use that. But, until Wednesday comes and we see what the revenue forecast brings, that's going to have an impact on on how we move forward. And one of the reasons why our budgets are coming out a little later than they normally would.
You know, and I guess I'll just add a little bit, Austin, like, so there have been some questions about rent relief, right? And the eviction moratorium. The projections are that that might be as much as $1 billion to try and get, make sure that we don't trigger a housing crisis in terms of an eviction crisis. Those are really big dollars, but luckily and hopefully that's a one-time only sort of expense, right? But what we want to do is make sure that we're as much as we can. I guess this kind of takes us full circle to what Rep. Sullivan said a little bit earlier in this, is making sure we understand in as much depth as possible what the federal package will allow us to do, what's in there, and then seeing how we match that with the rainy day fund. It's a bad, I think as a general rule, it's a bad idea to try to fund ongoing programmatic costs with one-time only money. So when you raise a couple of options out there for how to fund public health, I think we would all agree that public health is an ongoing expense that we have been under-investing in for decades. And so it's probably not the best idea to try and fund something like that with one-time only money. Might help us get started on it, but it's not good for a long-term approach.
And I'll just add, oh, go ahead, Senator Elias.
No, please.
I was just going to say that, it is very important to make sure we are distinguishing between the one time and what that one time is used for. There are people who are struggling so dramatically that you have to basically make sure they're not starving, that they have a roof over their head, make sure that small businesses are able to survive. And so that money is really going to be used, or we're really hoping that it helps people just regain stability. And so when you take a look at the need that's out there and what these dollars are going towards, and I'll say they are going towards that need to make sure that you can help people. And so then you take a look at our ongoing budget. I think you have to make that difference, because they are two very distinct things.
Austin, do you have a follow?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the questions. I'll turn it back over to the members for some closing remarks.
You might not have guessed, but I think vaccines work. I want everybody to go out and get them.
And I was just going to add, it's a big week on climate policy here in the Senate. We have had a hearing on the low carbon fuel standard in the Environment Committee. Today, we're hearing the cap and invest proposal. So we look forward to, and I know the House has identified climate action as one of the 4 priorities. We have made it a strong priority as well, and excited to see significant, meaningful proposals move forward alongside a really, really robust conversation on transportation investment. So it didn't come up in your questions, but I definitely want to highlight that climate and transportation are high priorities as we do our work in the next couple weeks.
All right, thank you, everybody. We will see you next week.